Welcome to the weekend warm-up presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my Action Network co-host Duck. Every Friday, we're coming to you live as we make our final additions to our weekend card. We're looking at the latest market movements, steam reports, injury reports, weather forecasts across the country to help you stay ahead of things and stay in the black this weekend. And since we're live, we're going to be taking questions from you in the audience along the way. You can submit your questions right there on the YouTube chat or over on Action Network's Discord, or you can just tag us on X. Happy to get into as much as you'd like to discuss in the next hour. Before we get into all the updates, though, there's a quick and easy way for you to tail us on any of the plays that we hand out in today's episode. First, sign up for Action Pro. You'll get instant notifications when Action Network experts like myself, Duck, Stucky, Colin Wilson, anytime we track a bet, it's going to pop for you there if you are an Action Pro subscriber. Plus, you can access our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and his predictive analytics team and a ton of other benefits. And right now, there is still a special offer out there for you. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and get $20 off the annual price with the promo code BBOC20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code BBOC20 and get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, Duck, the weekend, really, college football never stops anymore. We got Conference USA on Tuesdays. We're going to have Maction right around the corner. So the fact that we're looking ahead to Saturday and these Friday night plays, we're living it 24/7. But we have some steam reports for you to get into, some line movements that are of note. So let's start with the Arkansas game. The line movement here, it looks like it's steaming through 3. Talk me through what you're seeing there in the SEC and if you have any play on it.
Well, I just think we see now Auburn 4 straight losses, and the team is just kind of in disarray. There's now rumblings that Jackson Arnold is going to be possibly sharing duty this weekend as he was splitting reps in practice with Deuce Knight. So, yeah, we'll see kind of how that one plays out. But I found it really interesting that Arkansas opened +1.5, +2, and this came all the way through 3. So I think the product has looked a little better for Arkansas this season. They're still competing, they're still fighting hard, playing pretty good football for Bobby Petrino in his interim role here. And the way that the product has looked the last couple of weeks against Tennessee and Texas A&M, I just think you're starting to see some market buy-in that the Hogs are going to be really feisty here. On the other side, it's just been heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss for Auburn. The offense is a mess. They lost their starting center, and he's also one of their team captains, Connor Liu. And so could really see that affect the offensive line play on the road this weekend. I don't think the weather's going to be very good, so we'll see how that kind of plays into it. But I kind of agree with the move. It's Hogs or nothing here for me.
All right, on to a matchup in the Big 12 with a quarterback room that's absolutely decimated there in Morgantown. 3 West Virginia quarterbacks look like they're out or doubtful in this one. So it makes sense that TCU is steaming up to 17. Is there a number that you would leave the money on the sidelines, or do you think it's Horned Frogs or nothing here?
Well, I haven't really been impressed with TCU on the road in recent weeks. And now the problem is the quarterback room for West Virginia, as you had mentioned, it is so bad. The top 3 are out, and we saw it with Scotty Fox last week. It looked really bad against Central Florida, 6 out of 17, 47 yards, and just not quite there yet. He doesn't have enough time in the seat. We haven't seen him really do anything that leads me to believe that they can move it on TCU, but I would be concerned too about a couple recent TCU performances. Their experience last week is a little disjolted because of the elongated weather delays and the fact that that was such a marathon game against Baylor. But clearly didn't play very well against Kansas State on the road a couple of weeks back. And don't let that Colorado score fool you. It was 21-21 with 6 minutes to go, and they were in a complete fight in a game I thought they were going to play a little better in. So TCU hasn't shown me a ton here in the last couple of weeks. I just think West Virginia is unplayable. They just don't have any offensive punch. We saw it against Central Florida. This team looks so disjolted. I just don't see how you could play the Mountaineers here.
We do have questions coming in. A reminder to our audience, if you want to hop in with anything, feel free to throw it in that YouTube chat live. We'll try to get to as much as we can in the next 50 minutes or so. Question from Andrew Clark. At what point is Cal a bye? We're now up to 6. This is a Cal team that, at least from the wins and losses perspective, has grossly overachieved. And it all begins and ends with their true freshman quarterback. Hopefully in Berkeley, they can hand around the collection plate and have enough money to keep him there because he's someone that not only gives them pop offensively, he looks like a seasoned veteran. operating from the pocket, but also it's going to make recruiting and the transfer portal a little bit easier for them in the coming years if he is established and they throw a huge bag at him. It's probably going to cost $5 or $6 million to keep him there. That being said, last week they played really well for about half the game against North Carolina, played with their food a little bit, nearly got bit at the end of it. Now they have to fly cross country against a Virginia Tech team that's already, probably emotionally settled from the firing, having an interim head coach. What do you expect in this one? And would you need it to get to 7 to back the Bears, or do you think that the market has kind of overreacted to this cross country road trip and all of their close wins against a pretty easy, reasonable schedule thus far? But Virginia Tech has certainly laid some eggs already this season. It was enough to get their head coach fired. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, Cal's looked terrible the last month. They struggled badly against North Carolina. Coulda, woulda, shoulda lost that game. They got destroyed by Duke in the second half after they're up 21-7 at home, and they go 38 nothing the rest of the way with the Blue Devils. Close loss on the road, or excuse me, close win on the road cross country, going to BC in recent, and they haven't been on the road since that point. So I don't know. I'm not. Cal wowed us early in the season with these great performances against Oregon State and Minnesota on national TV. Everybody saw it, but I'm not quite sure that this team is really any good. And now you go to Blacksburg on Friday night in that environment with Enter Sandman. This team is still competing pretty hard. The offensive operation for Virginia Tech has not looked very good really all season. Looked a little better against Georgia Tech, but I don't know. I kind of lean under at the current number, 50, 51, and something like that. I kind of think this could be a little bit of a lower scoring game. And Virginia Tech's defense has played hard since the interim coach took over. So I can definitely give the Hokies credit for that. But I just don't see it going well for California. I would want at least 7.5 to even consider it, just because you do have the travel spot. You do have situationally, they haven't been playing good football in recent weeks. I mean, they got a pretty big one coming up on deck when they host 16th ranked Virginia. So maybe that's the spot you play Cal, because I just don't necessarily think we've started to see their quarterback JKS make a few of the rookie mistakes. We've seen him after playing brilliantly for several weeks. Well, now he's starting to play like a guy who hasn't had a lot of game experience. And that's just, it's still a very tough environment there in Blacksburg. So I'm not really in on Cal right now.
I'm going to sprinkle in a little weather report here that's going to lead up to your steam report, and it's between the Oregon Ducks and the Wisconsin Badgers. When you look at the weather report from Eugene, it is what people stereotypically think the weather in October is in Oregon. It's going to be a combination of soaking rain, winds that are going to be sustained in the upper teens with gusts into the mid 20s. And for that reason, this total is on the move. Talk me through it.
Well, I mean, we saw what Oregon did last week against Rutgers. Rutgers is far and away the worst defensive team in the Big Ten, and their drop off has been stunning. But Oregon, 12.3 yards per play last week and 750 yards while scoring 8 touchdowns. It's a tough team. This is a tough spot for Wisconsin. They haven't looked good offensively. It's a real problem when Billy Edwards isn't in there, and we've got Danny O'Neil, who was the worst quarterback in the Mountain West last year. I mean, it's a team that scored 20 points combined their last 4 games, and I just don't see it going very well here. It's a tough situation for Luke Fickell. I think they are saying the right things, that they have some confidence in him, but the roster just needs to be completely overhauled with Wisconsin, just because they don't have any offensive punch. They don't have an FBS level Big Ten quarterback who's operating the show right now. I feel like it's a real struggle for Wisconsin to go in there and score any points. So I would look at a team total under 7.5. I know the weather is really going to affect, but with some of that rain and the heavy precipitation, that can cause for some sloppy play. And you really are hoping that it's on the right end of the field if you're betting the under, because if teams turn it over on their own 10, well, then you set up the other opponent right away for possibly a cheap score. So it's really hard to necessarily handicap the total unless the wind comes in my opinion. But I still don't think this point total is high enough. Wisconsin is just so bad, and I don't think they can be counted on to stop Oregon for 4 quarters. It just seems to me like one where Oregon can name their score 42-7, 45-7. I would lay it with Oregon.
One of the critical injuries that are still up in the air as we head into Saturday out of the Big 12 is Devin Dampier for the Utah Utes. With him being labeled as questionable, this line is down to 13.5. Is Utah unplayable in your opinion? Forget about just the point spread, but any trust in their offense without Dampier running the show?
It seems that way. And, we talk about the BYU spot when they're going to Ames this weekend. Tough spot off the Holy War. Well, Utah's also off the Holy War, and they wanted to win that game, and they played hard for 60 minutes. Probably should have won the game. You look at some of the coaching decisions that Kyle Whittingham made late in that game, electing not to kick the field goal. There was some other things he did that were just kind of a little bit surprising. I'm sure they want to get back into it here, but if Dampier's not a go and it's Bird Ficklin who's leading the show, I don't know if I'm running to the window to lay two touchdowns. I'm not very high on Colorado. I bet the regular season win total under. We've talked about how bad this team has been all season. But to their credit, they have not quit at all on the season, even after it's gone sideways. Should have beaten BYU. Went toe to toe with TCU for 55 minutes. And then the win a couple of weeks back prior to the bye against Iowa State was really quite impressive, in my opinion. Now you're off the bye week. You can regroup. This team's still going to make a push for bowl eligibility. I don't know. I kind of think Colorado can hang around here a little bit. This team has not quit. And I really wonder with Utah now, you're starting to see some of their season goals slip away. It's going to be real hard for the Utes to get back into the Big 12 race. Now Dampier possibly is out. Maybe this team. I don't know. Maybe we kind of thought in the preseason that they were a little better than what they've shown. They struggle at times when they get behind, and that's the huge issue is they just can't throw their way back into games. The run game hums and the run game is really solid, but Colorado also has not been terrible against the run this season. They've been gashed a couple of times, but holding opponents to 4.5 yards a carry, I kind of think this defense can do enough to kind of lurk around and keep this within the number.
Let me hit you with a weather report that I think is going to impact the play on the field on Saturday, and that's the Sunflower State Showdown. I think I screwed that up. Kansas State, Kansas. Anyway, the Wildcats and the Jayhawks. It's going to be rainy. There's going to be some winds. Looking at a steady rain between 80 and 90% for most of this game. Winds gusting in that 10 to 15 mile per hour range. With the wet football and the winds the way that they're trending, usually that's bad news for the quarterbacks and Avery Johnson. You saw it in the opener in that soggy condition in Ireland. He can kind of fall apart as a passer at times. You have a play, though, that you're adding to this, and I kind of want you to walk me through this rivalry game because it seems like these two offenses have been moving in opposite directions for most of the year, and overall trust in these starting quarterbacks, you'd obviously go with Daniels over Johnson, but you seem to like the underdog here. Walk me through it.
Well, now that we're getting 3.5, this is a series play. Kansas State has won 16 in a row in the series, a series dominated by them. And if you don't think that Chris Kleiman is going to get these guys up for this major showdown, they are absolutely coming to town ready to go. And I just look at how Kansas State has played, and I feel like this group is starting to turn the corner. They've played much more competitive football and much more spirited defensively. They did lose to Baylor by 1 point, but they had a good win against Central Florida. They had a good win a couple of weeks back against TCU. Now they're fresh coming off the bye. I still think this team is able to make a bowl game and capable of that, meaning something to this Kansas State program. So, I mean, you're looking down the line at the rest of the games left on the schedule. If you want to go bowling, this is absolutely must-win territory for Kansas State. Preseason, this would have probably been 8.5, 9.5, and I think we've got so much perception change based on what we saw with our eyes on national TV the first 3 weeks. We saw it look terrible in Ireland in the second half. We saw them embarrassingly blow a multi-score lead against Army and lose that game outright. Looked really uninspired in the FCS game. We know what it looked like, but in the games that have taken place since that point, I mean, there's three solid performances now from Kansas State. And my question for anyone who likes Kansas is, what is Kansas's best win? When you go up and down the slate, they came back from down two touchdowns against Central Florida only because Central Florida's quarterback got hurt, and it was the Cam Fancher show there. Otherwise, this team would have been losers of three straight. Yeah, they beat West Virginia in a horrific spot from the Mountaineers, but I just don't understand why this team merits being favored by more than a field goal in a rivalry that they've been dominated against a team where I think the weather can help aid the more physical football team, the team that I think will run the ball a little bit better. Kansas State will go in there and play a little defense. Yeah, 3.5, absolutely. Give me the Wildcats here.
Going a little bit off the radar here with a Sun Belt matchup. The total has ticked down significantly between Arkansas State and Georgia Southern, and we've talked about how lousy these defenses have been throughout the season on the Group of Five deep dive. Any intel as to what is driving that market movement? Is it just, services putting out plays, or what's the deal with this one between the Red Wolves and the Eagles?
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of injuries. I haven't seen anything, a couple releases, but this total steamed down significantly, and I think a lot of it was a perspective based on poor weather. But from what I saw in Jonesboro, that weather is going to blow out by game time, so I don't think it's going to be bad. You might get a little bit of precip, but I don't think the weather is going to be bad enough to affect this. And you have two of the absolute worst defenses in the country, let alone the conference. Georgia Southern can't stop anything on the ground. Arkansas State's going to get torched through the air, similar to what we saw last night in Sun Belt play with two teams that are power rated low. The offenses have kind of stunk, but then you get these offenses in the arena with two really, really bad defenses, and they can just go back and forth like ping pong balls. I think that's what we'll see in Jonesboro this weekend. I still like over. If it was 62 right now, I would still play it again. I think this is going to be a high scoring affair.
Here's a little trivia for those tuning in right now. Which team has a 4-15 record against the spread as a home favorite in the last 5 seasons? They are from the MAC. Three, two, one. Let them know who it is, Duck, and how you're playing this and what you're seeing in the market, which is a little bit surprising to you.
Yeah, well, it's Northern Illinois. There's been no worse home favorite in the entire country over the last 5 years. They are just very poor at covering spreads at home. They're a great road dog. We all love betting Northern Illinois on the road when they're catching a bunch of points. They can catch their opponent sleeping. Well, that's not this case here. And I just don't, I've seen no Ball State injury reports. I've seen nothing that would reflect that this team is going to have any problems with their offense coming to town. And I look at how they played on the road against Western Michigan, which is an elite level MAC defense. It could be the best defense in the entire MAC. And it didn't go well. The game kind of got away from them. But Western Michigan's offense also was kind of able to turn that one up against Ball State a couple of weeks back. They regrouped, get a nice win against Akron, started to find something a little bit with Kyle Kelly offensively. And Northern Illinois has just been so terribly inefficient. I just don't understand this move up from 3.5 to 6.5. I think Ball State has a really good opportunity to possibly win this game on the field. Northern Illinois' quarterback play has been poor all season. They've rotated through a couple of players in Josh Holst, Brady Davidson, and Jackson Proctor, and they've all been inefficient. We don't see nearly the punch from the run game that we came to know and love from prior seasons with the Huskies. The defense has been serviceable, but they're still a tick down from what we've seen in prior years. I think Thomas Hammock is a great coach. I don't think he should be feeling a lot of pressure for this down season, but this is a group that's lost every game they've played against FBS competition this season, and now they're getting steamed. I don't agree with the move. I think Ball State is live here, so 6.5, that would be a play for me.
Speaking of adding plays, I'm just waiting for a half point in the Memphis South Florida game. I'll get to why that is in just a moment. Let me hit you with the injury report and update on Brendan Lewis in terms of the QB1 for the Tigers. He remains day to day, but the Memphis staff has been prepping AJ Hill throughout the week in terms of starter reps. So my anticipation is that the freshman is going to start. He's a pocket passer, big time recruit, 4-star kid, huge arm, could be a phenomenal buy low situation on a Tiger team that the whole market has run away from. Because when you look at it, in terms of the look ahead market before the Lewis injury, it was at about Memphis -1 as a consensus. Post injury, it opened at +3.5 and has ticked all the way up to Memphis catching 6.5. If it hits 7, I'm hammering this number. I think South Florida is the class of the American, but I think this is an overreaction against, a Memphis team and offensive staff that has been very creative over the years in terms of their run pass ratio, the quarterbacks that have come through. I mean, really coming into the season, we didn't expect Lewis to be as good of a quarterback as he's been in American play as a dual threat. I think they're going to be able to rework the offense with an entire week to build a package around Hill. And like I said, this is the guy who you talk about the FedEx money coming into Memphis and how they can dominate the G5 recruiting scene. Getting a kid like him to not sit at a power program for 2 or 3 years and say, all right, either this year or next year, you're going to be our starting quarterback. I think we're just getting an early preview with this kid. What are your thoughts on the Bulls as a team that looks to be in the driver's seat, with that quality win earlier in the season, or a pair, I should say, against Boise and Florida? If they can win out, they'll get that college football bid and be in the playoff. But all of a sudden, we're just going to assume that they're going to beat the doors off everybody in the American, including a Memphis team from a talent perspective that's very much on par outside of the quarterback position right now. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Real interesting matchup, and we've got the scheme, right? Everyone thinks about South Florida as this high-flying offense, and the majority of their work is done on the ground, and they are at their best when they can get the running backs gashing you right between the guard and center, right through the A gap, gashing you for 6, 7, 8 yards at a time, and then they run the slow, like a slow, not a slow mesh, but just a slow developing play action out of that. They run the receivers out with real wide splits. Well, Memphis can shut down this ground game. They're only allowing 3.5 yards per carry on the ground this season. Only UAB was able to really gash Memphis on the ground, and I attribute that really to Memphis just pulling a no-show. It was a rivalry game with UAB, the Battle of the Bones. It's kind of a rivalry to one team only. Memphis really didn't care. We saw that, and they got caught with their pants down. Well, they're not going to get caught here this week. This is absolutely the game they were looking forward to. They're intimately familiar with the scheme too, right? This team beat South Florida last year 21-3, and it's the same South Florida offense. And it's the same Memphis defense. And so they're at least familiar enough with the scheme, both in film study and also what they saw on the field last season to know how to defend this. South Florida, to their credit, they went down to North Texas and destroyed the mean green in the second half. The lights might have been a little bit too bright there and dented for them, but they've also feasted on really, really bad defenses the last month of the season. So you're going on the road. This is going to be a tough environment. Memphis is absolutely going to come ready to play. And, I think Memphis can kind of get the running game going too. They can get their running backs going against Todd Orlando's defensive front here. The offense with the quarterback, he was thrown into the line of duty without having much prep time, and it didn't look very good against UAB. But you give him a week of practice, taking the reps with the ones, creating a game plan that they can exploit some of the things they want to do offensively. I think it'll look a little bit better. Something leads me to believe Memphis is really going to show up here, but I think it starts and ends with their defense and how their defense plays on the field. I like the under in this matchup. I think it's going to be lower scoring, but I think Memphis will have a shot here at the end.
I like that you bring up the 21-3 decision last year. That was with Archie starting for USF. And the obvious difference is with Brown at the helm, he's somebody who is a power runner. He can get them those dirty yards, those, fourth and third and shorts and the goal to go situations. He's somebody where he can make the numbers work in the run game. Memphis sixth per PFF in rush defense nationally. So in terms of them altering their game plan a little bit run heavy and more quarterback design runs. I think they're the perfect team in the American to be able to battle it. Like I said, I'm probably going to pull the trigger if it just settles in at 6.5. I really want to get 7. I don't want to be caught, waiting for that half point, or maybe I just, bump it up -135, something like that to buy the half point if it doesn't coalesce there. Once the news breaks, I anticipate that they're going to say that Lewis is out for this game. Maybe that's the news that ends up pushing this over 7 or over 6.5, I should say. So that's where my head is at right now. All right, let's turn to
The
some.
last thing I'll
Yeah.
say too, real quick, South Florida's banged up offensively. They've got a long injury report. Now they're keeping that close to the vest, but Nimrod, their leading receiver, may not go. Sam Franklin, their leading running back, is questionable. He may sit, he may play, but the injury list is something to watch there for South Florida too. They may be coming into this one not necessarily with all the bullets in the chamber.
Turning to the weather report, I'm going to run through some of these, not quite as impactful as we've had in recent weeks of the weekend warm up. Starting in Norman, Oklahoma, there's going to be scattered thunderstorms working its way through the area, but only a 20 to 30% chance of thunderstorms throughout the game. That could translate to a stop and start, some delays. Little winds, but we are going to have a wet football, so something to consider between the Sooners and the Rebels. I know that we have a head-to-head bet on this. I didn't get the best number with the Rebels. It seems like it's bubbling up into that 5.5 point range. I'm hoping for worse weather because if it's a shambless game and he needs to create on the ground, I think that is probably beneficial for Mississippi in this one. Really, I think it just comes down to I want to see if Mateer is healthier. Can we get the Mateer pre-injury? And it's not just the way he's squeezing the football and its impact on his downfield passing, but also they've kind of treated him with kid gloves, wrapped him in bubble wrap, and said, we're not going to do, the designed runs, and we don't want you to leave the pocket nearly as much as you were earlier in the season. What do you think's going on with that? Is it time to take the governor off of this thing and let him go back to playing the way that he was, playing earlier in the season, reminiscent of what he did at Wazoo, where he was a stat sheet stuffer? Do you anticipate that version of Mateer, or do you think they're just going to lean on their defense in this game and try to pull out a close game in a rock fight?
Kind of think they lean on their defense and try and pull out a close game in a rock fight. That's what they've done all season. They've really pivoted and adapted their offensive profile. We've seen Oklahoma's offense in priors, specifically when they were in the Big 12, having to win shootouts, take risks, take chances in their play calling, go for it on fourth down, take red zone risks. Well, that has completely changed really all season because they do lean on this legitimate defense that is top 10 in most of the metrics: defensive success rate, EPA per play, explosiveness prohibited, early down success. Oklahoma's defense is absolutely elite. And we've seen it with Oklahoma just being comfortable being in these low, slow, grinding burner type of games. And I think that plays out again here this week. I'm not positive on what they're going to do with Mateer. They ran him a little bit more last week, and he threw the ball a little bit more effectively, so it leads me to believe the hand is okay. But this team is completely comfortable playing the field position game, punting you down to the 12-yard line because you're not moving at 88 yards. You're not stacking the successful plays together. I mean, my goodness, this team's allowed only 81 rushing yards per game and 2.5 yards per carry, 75 tackles for loss, and 29 sacks for Oklahoma's defense. This group is absolutely coming after Chambliss. I can appreciate that Ole Miss had a good showing on the road last week, but this Georgia defense is clearly down a couple of notches, and they're just not going to they didn't see the same resistance that they're going to see this week. So does Ole Miss cover or win? Yeah, maybe. But I like Ole Miss's team total under 24.5 here in this one. I think this is going to be first team to 24 wins, and I like the game under. I like the Ole Miss team total under.
There's two more weather updates that I'd like to hit. One that I think will be meaningful in the second half, and the other one that's kind of a false flag. I'll get to that in a second. Houston, Texas, we got UConn and Rice. We also have Southeastern Louisiana and Houston Baptist out of the FCS ranks. There's going to be scattered thunderstorms, but that's not really my concern here. It's the huge wind gusts that we're going to see in the second half between the Huskies and the Owls. I think that that is going to potentially ground the passing attack from UConn, and Fignano has an opportunity to keep it going. He's been spinning the ball beautifully in the last month, coming off one of the best games of his entire career. So if there are points scored in the first 30 minutes between UConn and Rice, I think it's a perfect opportunity. Just double check on that weather. You're going to have winds into the mid 20s, possibly touching 30 miles per hour in terms of gusts. That could turn it into a Cam Edwards affair. And we know what Rice wants to do in terms of playing keep away and running the football. They can't throw the ball to begin with. So second half under should be on the menu for you. It's also going to be windy in Miami, Florida, which on paper would affect Stanford and Miami with sustained winds in the 15 to 20 mile per hour range. But it's not a massive concern inside of Hard Rock because of the layout and the roof situation. In a lot of cases, there's been really gusty situations, but at field level, you're not even seeing any impact at all. Even on top of the field goal posts, you're not seeing the flags blowing. So something to consider where you're looking at it and you're making some plays on over-unders just based on that. That's not something that should impact your play. Duck, I'm going to kick it to you for any FCS weather and angles that you have on your card.
Yeah, I mean, we really looked at the weather pretty extensively, and we're just not getting a lot of the powerful weather or wind impact this weekend in college football. But it is going to be windy in Brookings on Saturday evening for the Dakota Marker game. SDSU and NDSU will be a really fantastic FCS matchup. I think it's going to be lower scoring. We've also got an injury update to follow as South Dakota State's quarterback Chase Mason may not go in this one. So that'll really hurt the Jackrabbits. South Dakota State lost a lot of offensive production last season, and this offense is down several notches from what they had been in prior seasons. And we know about the mass exodus of talent that went with Jimmy Rogers to Washington State. So I think that, the respect for South Dakota State as a program is warranted and due, but this is not nearly as talented a team as we've seen in prior seasons. This will be a close game. It's the Dakota Marker. It's their biggest game of the season. I think this is going to be an under type of play, and I'm going to write this one up and put it in the app. But under 48.5, under 49.5, go shop around for the best line. But I think this is going to be one where both these teams struggle to get it going through the air, and we'll see another slow burning grinder. Should be a great game on Saturday night. I think it's the ESPN2 game, if I'm not mistaken. So everyone will be able to watch it. Um, NDSU is probably going to win this game by a touchdown. I think it's going to be lower scoring.
Question from our chat. NC State live against Pitt. I'll tell you what, if Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis, their two superstar linebackers, do not play for Pitt, I think just, that impact and what it will do potentially at the second level for those runs from Hollywood Smothers, I'm going to play it. I'm somebody who's kept an eye on Biles this season. Just from a fantasy college football perspective, yes, I'm a sicko and I have a team with defensive players. But Biles has been one of those incredible game changers. You saw it with his long pick six earlier in the season. And, the linebacking core in general being so banged up, that's a big part of this defense and their overall identity, stopping the run first. So, yes, I would say that the Wolfpack are definitely alive in this one. If both of those guys, or even if just Biles doesn't play, I think that's going to have an impact in terms of what they're able to do, also in passing down situations and bringing a little extra heat from the linebacking core. All right, let's look at some more injuries here. Jordan Tyson officially ruled out for Arizona State, so consider that not just for a play or a fade when it comes to Sparky, but also looking at any player props as it relates to Sam Levitt. Ryan Brown, Purdue's quarterback, has practiced, but Odom said they're prepping multiple quarterbacks, which I think is a bit of gamesmanship. At this point, the fact that he's practiced now multiple days, I would be surprised if he doesn't get a go at the starting job here for Purdue. Drew Pine, he remains a game time decision. Eddie George has been pretty cagey in terms of his injury reports and showing the media all of his cards. It could be Lucian Anderson, who we know what he is. He's limited as a downfield passer. He had a pretty high completion percentage in his last start, but there's clearly not putting the ball in the air beyond 10 yards. So you know that if they're going to score, it's going to be methodical drives. There's something to consider in terms of pace from the Falcons. Already hit on Brendan Lewis and what his availability is going to look like. It's going to come down to the 11th hour if he's going to be a go or not. I'm anticipating that it's going to be AJ Hill, the freshman for Memphis. Texas safety and leading tackler Michael Taffy. Is that, Duck, can you help me out with that one? Is that the correct pronunciation on him?
I mean, I think so. That's how I say it.
All right, so he's out, which obviously has an impact on what they want to do defensively. He's somebody that walks down into the box and can help, curtail and kind of put a cap on an opposing rushing attack. Speaking of rushing
Leading
attacks,
tackler. He's their leading tackler.
yeah, he's the leading tackler. He is the man. I think he's kind of a heart and soul kind of guy for that defense. He also obviously is doing all the communicating on the back end from his safety position, so something to consider. And then in terms of shutting down a running game, Michigan's Justice Haynes is likely a game time decision. This came out in the last 30 minutes per Pete Nakos of on3.com. So you're going to have to wait until right until kickoff to find out if he is a go. And his impact, I would argue, has the biggest impact of a single player of any offense in the Big Ten. This is an offense that needs him to be popping those big plays to open up everything else that they've done. I just don't have faith in this coaching staff. There's some staffs around the country that can make lemonade out of lemons. I think they absolutely have to have all their horses and they have to have them healthy to be able to move the football consistently. So my faith in the Wolverines takes a major hit if Haynes is outlined or sidelined, I should say, for the second straight week. Check out the Parlay Express account and the free award-winning Action Network app. That's where we'll be posting a lot of our plays. That also includes everything from Stuck, from Colin Wilson. You're also going to find a bunch of fun long shot bets and parlays that are bundled together specifically for the Parlay Express account. You can also find the quick slip links in our episode that aired on Tuesday in YouTube. You can also find in the episode description and the podcast feed as well as Colin and Stuck's exhaustive breakdown of everything that is on their card for Saturday. You can go ahead and log on to actionnetwork.com/bet now to find and tail some of those plays. All right, Duck, a program that we have been banging the drum for. We haven't backed down. They had an ugly loss earlier in the year, but Southern Miss is trending in the right direction. They are in the driver's seat in the Sun Belt West, and now they're up against a Monroe team that is leaking oil. I mean, I don't even know who's going to have the ball in their hands. I mean, the quarterback situation's a mess. Their top running back, McReynolds, is also questionable. It seems like they're going to be drawing dead against a Southern Miss offense that when they can run the ball, they go to absolute top of the Sun Belt in terms of offensive efficiency. When they can't run the ball, it's a little bit of, hero ball situation for their quarterback in terms of Braylon Braxton. But I think they should be able to do both here in this game. This line is now at 13.5. How high would you go? And is this a ladder situation for USM?
Yeah, it sure could be. I played Southern Miss today at minus 13.5. I also took Louisiana Monroe's team total under 17.5. as you alluded to, just a complete mess for Louisiana Monroe. The injury list is very long. They don't have a starting kicker. Their kicker remains out, and they've held open tryouts to their students on campus to try to obtain somebody who can kick a football. I think they had a backup receiver who was attempting extra points last week. It was just an absolute disaster. And now Aiden Armanta is not going to play, and the backup is also out. So now they're going to hand the reins to third string quarterback. I think it's Landon Graves who's going to get the call, and it's just really going to be complete trouble for Louisiana Monroe. We've seen it over the last several weeks that, they kind of peaked when they were able to win in one of their rivalry games against Arkansas State, a game they had lost and failed to cover 15 years in a row. They get that huge monumental win. They scored 25 points in the three games since then and have been outscored by about 85 points collectively in those three games and have just looked absolutely terrible against Northwestern, Coastal Carolina, and Troy. And I just don't see it getting any better. This offense is just a complete mess. They can't convert third down. They really even can't get McReynolds really breaking away in the ground game. It's been a real problem for them. Only ran the ball for 98 yards last week. Several times this year, they've been held under 100 as a team. Louisiana Monroe, kind of a fun story with the way they started 3-1 and had some nice wins. But I just don't know, looking down the rest of their slate, if they're going to win another game this season. And now you're starting to see the injuries pile up. I don't know. Maybe UAB reached out and Brian Vincent's got one foot out the door there, going back to Birmingham where he wants to be. But this is going to be major trouble. You look at Southern Miss. Yeah, it was a nice win last week against Louisiana Lafayette, kind of solidifying themselves as being in the driver's seat in the Sun Belt West. But there's no ability to take your foot off the gas now because every game for Southern Mississippi the rest of the way is a Sun Belt West contest. And I mean, they're all must wins from here on out because of the way that the conference still uses divisions. Every game against a divisional opponent just becomes that much more important. I think this team is absolutely going to light the Warhawks up this week. I think there's no holding back. I love what Charles Huff is doing with his guys. I like how they're actually playing competently defensively. In some of the last couple of games, they've actually been able to step. It was kind of a, Georgia Southern on that Thursday night a couple of weeks back punched in a couple cheap scores at the very end, but this team has been building big leads. I think they put their foot on the gas in a big way this weekend. Yeah, this is one that may be a margin call.
I appreciate the text from Patrick in Austin. It's Michael Taff. Hook him. He's throwing in those extra A's, F and an E, just to kind of head fake me a little bit. But Taff, not Taffy. Appreciate that. Speaking of the chat, we still have a little bit of time here if you want to throw in any questions about particular games. As I mentioned, the only one that I'm waiting on is that Memphis number to pop to 7 in terms of adding additionally to the card. Duck, while we wait for anything else to come in from a question perspective, is there any play, or I should say, any game that you don't have a play on that it's a pure fact-finding mission? You need to see something, whether it's a quarterback change, whether it could be a coaching change, a reaction coming off of a rivalry game, a win or a loss. It's purely you just want to get a little bit more intel. I know at this point in the season, more than halfway through, we start to have pretty strong takes on just about anybody. Like I'll throw this out there: Indiana, UCLA. This is a mystery box game to me, where on one hand I got Kurt Signetti, who's an absolute raving lunatic, and he beats the brakes off of teams when he gets an opportunity, as though every coach slept with his wife in the Big Ten. And then on the other side, we got UCLA that all of a sudden, like they went from being a laughingstock, one of the worst teams in the entire country, gets their coach fired, gets absolutely blasted by New Mexico at home, to then they're on the warpath and they have the kind of quarterback play that's instilling confidence in Nico. Nico's now going to be a go on Saturday as well. New offensive coordinator, in terms of having the reins and having this offense be reshaped in the image that he wants. All this being said, everything in my being is saying this UCLA situation, it's not a dead cat bounce. I think they went from being a team considered top 15 or bottom 15 in the entire sport to maybe they can compete for bowl eligibility. But Indiana is a cut above, not just roster wise, but also mentality. They have this like junkyard dog mentality. When they get on you, they absolutely go for the jugular. So that being said, I'm leaning to IU, but my money's on the sideline because I can't figure out. Nothing makes sense with UCLA. I don't know if I've seen a turnaround this drastic in one season from a Power Four team. Sometimes you see this with G5 schools. They get crushed in paycheck games and then they bounce back in conference play. but it was the reverse. They were paying teams to kick their ass in September. What are your thoughts on a game like this, or do you have any other circled where you just need a little bit more intel, a little bit more film to figure out what's going on?
Well, I mean, Indiana's obviously the far superior team, but I've been very impressed with UCLA and how they've turned it around with Tim Skipper. You know, when Tim Skipper took over, there was a window of time where anybody and everybody could have bailed. They could have burned the redshirt year and hit the portal and flaked. We didn't see that happen with UCLA. Everybody kind of rallied the troops. They really bought in, and we've seen the play really enhanced on the field. It's all three levels. It's offense, defense, and special teams. We see the execution on third down sharper. Red zone execution, converting those trips into touchdowns has been better. Defense has been flying to the football in ways that we never saw the first few weeks of the season. I mean, this team was just getting run up and down the field by UNLV, by Utah, by New Mexico. And it really has started to change. And I think this team really is believing. I think Indiana will win this game comfortably, but they play at a slower pace. And I think, there's a chance with Indiana after a lot of the highly emotional games that they've been through in priors with Oregon and Iowa and Illinois, and then to some extent last week against Michigan State. I don't know if this is one they're going to try and go out and blow the doors off UCLA, or maybe you maybe you get the twos worked in a little bit on defense a little bit earlier in the third quarter. Maybe Mendoza plays until you're up by 21, and then maybe you let the other Mendoza throw it around at quarterback for a while because you may need him later on in the season. So I don't know. I would be inclined to believe this is probably closer to a three touchdown margin than four touchdowns, but I wouldn't put it past any of these coaches. We've seen so many coaches that know the number and try to do crazy stuff. Like we saw it last week with Indiana. Jonathan Smith down by four touchdowns, 38-10, calling timeouts with 5 seconds to go to kick a field goal to cover. I mean, that stuff happens. So this is a pass for me. This is, like you said, this is maybe a learn game for both teams, but not one I'm really dying to run to the window to get a bet down on. Similarly in nature, SMU and Wake. This will be a fascinating game here. SMU getting a little more respect here after how they've played in recent weeks. I still don't know
And
if
we're going to
this
get
team.
Jennings. Jennings is officially in. I mean, that's what we all figured, but at least you have that clarity.
Yeah, and he'll have to be for them to compete. Wake Forest, give them credit. They've been much, much more competitive than expected in Jake Dickert's first season there in Winston-Salem. I've been impressed with how Wake Forest has competed, how their offense has looked sharp, even with Robbie Ashford out at times, and Claiborne, the running back, has missed time, and they still keep rolling. This could be a real test for SMU. People are now talking about SMU as a dark horse to be in contention to potentially be an ACC guy. I'm not there. No,
Yeah.
I'm not there. Um, the other interesting thing is there is no bigger spot in ACC play. Now you're off this monumental road win against Clemson. It's big for SMU. I don't care who is playing for Clemson. I don't care what the situation is for the team. You go in as SMU, you're still new to the conference, and you beat Clemson on the road like that. And then you host Miami next week, and slipped in as this trip to Wake could be real trouble for the Mustangs if they're not careful.
Yeah, that question came in from Mason Bryant. So you provided your thoughts on that matchup between SMU and Wake. Question from Sam: Do you still like Buffalo over Akron? Hell yeah, brother! It is hanging tight at 9.5. Has not hit double digits because they are famously 0-3 in MAC play as a favorite. They have not acquitted themselves well at all in that favorite role under Pete Lembo. But here's the thing: they beat the brakes off of Akron last year. They're up 38-7, and they let them off the hook. They end up winning the game by 11. I think that we are getting a massive discount. I also think that Taquan Roberson, now that he's playing from the pocket, he's exploded through the air in the last 2 weeks. I don't think there's really anything that is on the menu for them that they won't be able to do really well from a play calling sheet perspective. They're going to run, they're going to pass, they're going to score a lot of points in this game. And I'm waiting for the Buffalo defense to put together 4 quarters of really good football. They have the personnel, they have the monsters in the front seven like Red Murdoch. I think that they are going to beat the hell out of the Zips in this one. And I think we need to take advantage of it. The fact that there's a bit of an overcorrection in the market. To be favored over a team like Kent by 24 just a month ago, and now all of a sudden another team that's really down like Akron is only 9.5. I think that's a little bit too much of a market correction. So I'm going to keep my money on the Bulls. I may end up doubling down. I really like this one a lot. Another question from Scott Cope. Do you guys have anything on the Delaware State game in the FCS? They're a high-flying scoring team. Do you see them keeping that up under head coach Deshaun Jackson, aka Jackpot? What's your thoughts there, Duck?
Well, Delaware State has not played a real strong schedule up to this point in the games that they've won. They've got a couple non-Division One wins, and they beat Albany, who's way down. But they played really competitive football against Sacred Heart and also Monmouth, and we all know what Monmouth has been doing offensively this season. So it's been impressive to see them score a bunch of points. They have a really good quarterback who has done well to Caden Bennett has done well to run the ball a little bit and extend plays on the ground, has 9 rushing touchdowns. He's really improved that Delaware State offensive attack by being able to throw it a little bit. North Carolina Central also has a really, really good quarterback in Walker Harris, and that team is probably going to be one of the better teams that Delaware State has played this season. Should be high scoring, should be a bunch of points. I initially think this spread is probably about 4 or 5 points too high. So to answer the question, yeah, I think they should be able to keep it within 15 and a half, 16 and a half. But I think the over might be the better play. This should be back and forth with each of these defenses just getting shredded by the opposing offense.
All right, that'll do it for the weekend warm up under the Big Bets on Campus banner presented by DraftKings. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, hitting us up with questions along the way. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, not just the questions that you're putting in here, but any comments. It helps with the algorithm, gets us, discovered by more people out there, more subscribers, bigger audience. It's good for everybody. So please, please, please subscribe and like. I know it's annoying, but the subscription thing, the little bell, please click it. It makes a world of difference to us. Thanks for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. For Duck, I'm Mike Calabrese. Best of luck with all your bets tomorrow, and we'll catch you on Tuesday for the group fight.